Hello and welcome to Deep Learning Leaders. My name is Eric Lando and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Encord, the data development platform for AI teams. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Dotan, the founder of Theator, the surgical intelligence company that provides hospitals and healthcare professionals with data-driven insights to achieve higher quality care. Thank you for joining me today, Dotan.
Thank you. Hi, Eric. Great to be here.
Great. So we have a lot that I want to cover today, but the first bit about your bio, which I thought was quite interesting. You spent quite a lot of time in the IDF, and I'm curious if any of your time there translated to how you think about running a company, how you think about, running a tech team in technology. What have you carried forward from that experience, if anything?
Yeah, so I grew up in Israel, and there is a military service in Israel. Before my military service, I did a bachelor degree in mathematics and computer science, and then I went to one of the units in RDF intelligence. This is one of the those are one of the units that are known for the startup nation. Like this is where the
Hmm.
connections are coming from. This is where the experience and you're learning about people in your age that have similar knowledge and similar interests, and then you going out and starting a company. I spent a bit more than the mandatory, a lot more than the mandatory time there, leading the computer vision team in IDF intelligence, like a very unique opportunity, and it was like in the
Mm.
time that this field changed dramatically from the becoming, I think, from a more of like academic domain to really industry ready. It was like
Mm.
2008 to 2015. So a lot of small and big revolutions that there were in this period. So it's just extremely exciting time to focus on this space. The way that the unit works is in there's approach of very similar to early stage startups. I will say you always working on very short time period. It's usually not very long going projects. It's something like you have 3 to 6 months. You have a specific thing that you want, kind of like market evaluation. You have a specific thing that you want to do, and you need to rapidly to create an MVP. Starting to do very lean startup approach internally, and I think this gives a lot of the people that are coming from this unit the foundation for starting a startup after.
Interesting. And so I wanted to touch on the evolution that you've seen in computer vision because there's probably been evolution in multiple dimensions. One is probably the early days were handcrafting a lot of features and kind of putting together these heuristic systems, and now it's throwing things into a neural network. What kind of evolutions have you seen in the difference between the academic approach, as you said it, to industrial ready computer vision applications?
Yeah, I think it's obviously the biggest difference is the transition to deep learning, which is very old news. But thinking about when I started this space, we didn't do really computer vision. We did image processing, and then the computer
Hmm.
vision that we have done after became classical computer. I don't remember it as classical back then. It was just
Right.
computer vision and machine learning. Uh, those were, I think there were many different research groups working on many different technologies to solve many different tasks. And deep learning really changed that. Everyone, I think, it's really tired of hearing about it because it's so old. But it was. I remember the time that it was you starting to understand that it's no longer the case. You have everyone is
Mm.
working on the same technology, working on the same thing to solve completely different tasks, and that was, I think, the transition that made it so ready for bigger challenges that are, and then the industry immediately adopted that, and it's like just dramatically improved after that.
What what was the time scale of that transition? Did you feel like it happened very suddenly, or was it over a good amount of time, and you just kind of opened up? So everyone's suddenly using convolutional neural networks, or was it like a shift that just happened in a quicker period?
I think it's like 2 years, I would say, and it
Mm,
also in one moment. I think AlexNet
mm,
is 2012. Nothing really changed immediately. Like the day after, nothing really changed. I
mm,
remember that we thought you can't really do okay, this is like cool, but you can't really do like computer vision based on deep learning if you don't have enormous amount of data, and this is a like huge barrier. Still to extent it's a challenge, but we learned a lot
mm,
since then. I think 2014 was when I at least saw the large transition when it was obvious that image classification is solved. Around a year
mm,
after object detection, this is like a field that I was really involved with and invested in. Also, basically solved by Dr. Ross Gershik, that we are that works with us now. It's like very privileged to working with him as a consultant to theater with the fast RCN, faster and so forth. And then you saw that after each milestone, dozens of companies, at least in Tel Aviv, I could see like dozens of companies that are basing their technology on those kind of solutions.
What was there any other difference between the what you consider an academic approach and an industrial approach in computer vision AI generally, besides the kind of shift to deep learning? Is there a way that academics think about the problem fundamentally different from people that are implementing it in practice?
So uh, definitely yes. Again, I think like last mile is usually
Mm,
the case, and it's the most challenging one. I see like coming from like starting from in academia, and it's just like my dream in when I was like 16. I started university in 15 in the age of 15, and when I was 16, like if you ask me what I want to be when I will grow up, it's like I want to be in academia, and I completely changed my course uh, from really wanting to be a lot like I wanted the impact. I wanted to see it in action. And the biggest difference that I see, I think there are like many differences in a project we can talk about, but the difference between solving a problem to understanding that it is solvable. In the academia, you
mm,
want to like it's okay, it's solvable. That's fine. I'm fine with that. I can stop. I really wanted to do the solving part as well. I wanted to see like how
mm,
is that really in the day to day, and this is what the industry is doing. And when deep learning, like because deep learning is so, and we can talk a lot more about that, like so operational enhanced.
mhm.
This is completely different. The ability that you can get in progress uh, when you are thinking about the application and not only about the research aspects is enormous.
Yeah, I love that distinction. Knowing a problem is solvable versus actually solving the problem. There's such a gulf there. I want to focus in on the last mile. So, what goes into the last mile of the problem to actually solve it in the real world?
So I think a lot of operation, like data organization, and I'm not also only
Hmm.
saying that because with you, and a lot of engineering in
Hmm.
this process. Uh, we I learned that this is like my approach here is very like contrarian approach, even though I didn't knew that this is the case. But when you're thinking about AI product or even just AI technology, the way that we are organizing the focus between what we can, like how we do like data organization, how we the engineering and the development piece of it, and also the
Hmm.
research aspect, or I would say ideas. I don't think that they're like weighted in the right way. I feel that
Mm.
ideas and being very like genius researcher are great, but ideas are very cheap
Hmm.
You're only as good how quickly you can evaluate and test your ideas, and this is why you need very strong engineering skills, and you need
Yep.
the mechanism, like you need all of those systems that allows you to prove or disprove the different ideas that you have. You can, like, if you are doing it well, you can also prioritize better. But this is
Hmm.
only as fast as, like, how fast you can test your ideas. And the third piece, I think, is like it doesn't really matter how good your idea is if you don't have the right data. This is
Mm.
a blocker. Testing there, I think it's very, very critical. Those kind of things, like, will never, like, this conversation will never be in in the academic world. Actually, and honestly, I don't think that it should. I don't think that I'm not. I don't want anyone to think that I have anything against the academia. This is a completely different focus, and I understand why applying computer vision, applying
Mm.
AI can boost very well when you're thinking about it from industry perspective and investing on those areas, and more of the concepts around AI and understanding why things are working, and all of the those, like, uh, improvements definitely, like, should come from research and deep understanding on the domain.
Yeah, the academia is the idea factory, and industry is the real factory, translating those ideas into things that actually work in reality. And I've said before, but the feature that most dictates the success of a machine learning or data science project is the speed of the iteration cycle. So the faster that you can get reps in, the more likely that you are actually to get something that works in practice. And that comes with not just generating ideas, but having the engineering and the ability, the operational muscle to be able to do these things quickly and effectively. Um, so we got sidetracked. We started with the IDF. So and then afterwards, you started a company before Theodore. I'm curious. I1, I believe. I'm curious to hear your experience. Going and starting a new company and what that was like, and what you learned from that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a short experience with the Ion. In my
Ion, sorry.
background, before I was a lifeguard, also, like, during my student years, and I was like a kid swimmer, and then I was a lifeguard. So this area of like pool safety was very close to me, and we
Mm,
started a company immediately after I finished my military service. Basically, trying to do the things that I've learned in IDF intelligence, and leverage the computer vision understanding that I have on finding patterns that maybe require an alerts, and we try to apply
mm,
that to pools and to detect the patterns of kids drowning. This is something that it's and we I was surprised how, like, big of a problem that is in, like,
mm,
across the world, and what was definitely important enough value to pursue. Uh, Really not a big enough market to pursue, and then I think I
mm,
learned the hard way so many lessons about entrepreneurships and then about like how this economy works. If you really, I'm, like, very impact driven entrepreneur, but if you can't make it a good or a large enough business, you can't really do the
mm.
impact. And I think this is something that this year taught me very well.
Mm, yeah, because I think the problem is quite if I remember the statistic correctly, maybe in the US it's one or two children die per day in a pool. It's a very pressing problem. I'm surprised that there wasn't any demand for the technology to try to reduce that.
It's the number one cause of death for children under the age of 5 in the
Wow.
US. Uh, and still it doesn't, if you compare it to any other, like, main diseases like diabetes and other, it's like it's nothing. And it's good because kids doesn't die very often.
Mm,
But when you look at it from business perspective, we didn't have any any business considerations when we build that. Like we build a solution. Think about it, like it was like 2015. Our
Mm,
technology was based on object detection tracking and action recognition, which eventually became the basis of the work at Theater. And we did it in pool, so we were concerned about privacy. It wasn't the time that
mm,
cloud was like that, like more okay with privacy around the world. So we did everything on edge. We built a pool LAN. We replaced the existing pool LANs with a pool that has 180 cameras,
mm,
and event like and you need like few of those to cover the entire pool. We needed to design our own board. At the time, we didn't have any edge GPUs that just like readily available that you can. So we really needed to build everything.
mm.
So it was cost the cost was like roughly around the cost of a pool, I would say. Which is like who cares? Like it's saving lives, but it doesn't how the market works. Obviously, we were very naive. And the market, if you look at the total available market, like looking at it from not from technological perspective, but from business perspective, it just like didn't add up, and it wasn't big enough for VC investment. There was like those kind of problems
Mm.
that we had. So yeah, we put that on pause. We wanted to create a bigger impact, and I was looking for my other next opportunity.
Excellent. And maybe before we jump into the next opportunity, which I'm very curious to talk about, what percentage of your technological headache came from the hardware versus the software in at that time? I imagine the hardware was by far the biggest, just general set of issues that you're encountering.
Yeah, we used the Tegra K1 that was like very, very new as a system on module. The ability to just like to move back then was very, very challenging, especially when you're not working on like very standardized environment. So I will say a combination. You didn't PyTorch didn't exist. Like none
Hmm.
of the like we had it was really the early beginning of deep learning
Mm,
infrastructures that was all in C++. So it was a
mm.
different time, I would say.
That is quite a different time, and people don't remember how difficult it was to get a deep learning network to actually run. Now you can just kind of plug these things off the shelf. So um, you took some of the learnings and you started theater. I'm curious to hear the story of how that began and how you decided to choose this idea and what the founding story was in general.
Hmm. Yeah, I met Tamir Wolf, my co-founder and CEO, uh, roughly like the same time. I think like while I was still in Ion, I met him for the first time. It was like the sunset of Ion, and we started to talk about a problem that he experienced in the first hand. Not that he's a physician, but not actually as like not as a patient directly, but from a personal story that he had in his family, and we were amazed from how like how much high variability there is in surgical care. This was like where it started. I think it is general to healthcare, but it was really mind-boggling the variability that we found in surgical care, and we just like dive into that. We looked at in his case it was appendectomy, very very common and standard procedure, and just like having to know like it was like his boss and his wife that had like in the same time period both needed to do appendectomy. They went to different hospitals and they got completely different treatment, and it was just like really like huge surprise for him to see that even in like the bread and butter, not like the unique procedures in healthy people, there is so much difference in the approach and also in the result eventually from coming to like those procedures. We started to investigate the numbers and we saw how huge the difference is. Today we know it's not the problem, it's the symptom of the problem, but we definitely started with the variability in surgical care. Yeah, and this is like when it's we are entering the exciting domain of surgical documentation, I would say, and okay, yeah, it's like everyone really wants to hear about surgical documentation. So the, I feel like so like thinking about it from the beginning, the the way that surgery is being thought and performed is it just like, basically passed down like generation after generation. It's not about like there is no standardized accepted approach for doing surgery. It is very common in general in healthcare in medical world that you are learning your knowledge from a mentor. And there is a transition in the last, I would say, 10 years or so that mostly impacted medical, but less surgical by now, that called evidence-based medicine. Maybe you heard about this phrase. When I was hearing about it in the first time, I was really surprised as a researcher, as an engineer. I was like, okay, if evidence-based medicine exists, what does it means about everything else in medicine? And the fact most of medicine, especially traditionally, is not evidence-based. You are providing specific treatment to a specific condition because this is what you have been taught, that this is what the one before you have done, and this is like what the generation before them taught them. And there are more and more areas and treatments, domains. We are very familiar with, like as patients, like we are familiar with pharma. So in pharma, it's like very evidence-based. It's very data-driven. But in treatment, you see it enter more and more to each and every domain. And in surgery, this is lacking. And this is lacking because it is very tough to really understand which approaches and techniques are really impacting the outcomes. So you are taking the approach techniques from your own experience or the experience of your mentor. And this is why I'm like taking this like another step and say it's about documentation. Because, and this sounds like a jump, but the fact that there isn't a consistent, detailed documentation of what's happening in the room. And there is a documentation to surgery. Talk about it in a moment. It is very hard to connect between the approaches and the events that happen during surgery to the results because the results are documented. You know the outcomes. Eventually, this is something that is like you will find in the medical record. You just don't know what was actually being done during surgery, and this is what we are as a company. This is what we are tackling. And you know, like if you're talking about computer vision and AI, it's like in a way it's very similar pattern here. We have a ground truth problem. So we are first solving the ground truth. We want to understand what actually happened during surgery, and then we can correlate it with the results and find the patterns that led to better quality of care, better surgery in general. In some cases, also more efficient surgery. You can save life, but you can also save money or save time that can allow you to accept more patients. So those are the kind of fields that we can improve by having better documentation in surgery. Yeah, that's a great question. So I will start by because like people don't understand like I didn't. which documentation exists today for surgery. So there is an obligation for having a documentation after surgeon finishes surgery. They have 48 hours to write operative report, write what happened during surgery. Documentations today, and then I think there are like two main reasons that you can think about why documentation is being done today. One is for administrative reasons. You need to first, like you just need the documentation for compliance, and you also use it for billing, especially in the US, but I think around like also in other places. So this is actually dictate what has to be in the documentation, and it's like if you are not billing about for a specific approach or technique, and you're not, like usually you're billed for like specific instruments or like or the diagnosis and stuff like that, so you don't have to document that, and it's just like very hard work to document those. And this is why templates are so common around documentation. So you can find places that you will see exactly the same, like word by word, the same documentation for surgery, like by a surgeon, because this is actually capturing the things that is important for compliance and for billing. The other reason for documenting is communication, but because of the first point that I mentioned, surgeons know that this is not a form of communication. So communication of what happening during surgery is basically memory based. If you want to tell, if you're like doing handoff and you want to tell like the next physician what happened during surgery, you won't tell him, please read the documentation and this is what happened. Like you maybe like tell him like that something interesting enough happened that you remember, and you want to share. So and also think about, it's not that this is like unsolvable problem by surgeons. I don't, like, nobody expects the anyone that is like that busy, or even if they are not busy, and they are, to really document in that level of details what happened. But there is an opportunity in the last, I will say like 30 years, like starting in the end of the 80s, that surgery became more and more minimally invasive in nature. So this means camera-based, laparoscopic surgery, endoscopic, robotic surgery. All of those are camera-based surgeries, which means that everything that the surgery sees, the camera, he actually like see, like he or she looks at the screen. They're not looking at the surgeon, at the patient directly. So the computer can see exactly the things that the surgeon have seen. So you can capture that. You can also analyze it and to understand surgery. And this is what we are doing as a form of additional layer of documentation that you can then correlate and help to enhance quality and efficiency. To your second point about like how you like make this impact, this is not the AI problem. This is the product challenge, because a lot of it is around. It's I would say even in a level of behavioral change, and it connects directly to the company vision. And when we started the company, one of the things that we said, our goal is to disseminate surgical best practices. This is what we said. We want that the surgical practices exist. We just need to make sure that they are present in every OR in the world. And very early, I think like even before starting in the company, we changed that. We said our goal is to understand and disseminate surgical best practices, because surgical practices in an evidence-based manner rarely exist in surgery. They all need to be validated or invalid. Like there are things that are, every surgeon will tell you that needs to be done, that are so obvious for them, but they were never being tested for actually impacting and working. And we are doing dozens of those studies with our customers and partners that they're doing it. It's a clinical study, but we are enabling it by scaling the data collection process and the analysis to correlate with the results. So I guess it's a change. It's also like different generations of surgeons. You see there are like more or less acceptance. Now it's a question about the approach because when you are coming to very experienced surgeons that it is very hard to change their behavior, and you don't necessarily need to. They have good results. They have like very strong reputation. So the approach with them is that they are the educators. So you have a specific approach that you believe that leads to better outcomes. Let's prove it together. Let's do a study that shows that your approach is better than others. We did see that, and in some cases, it's just not like it's not the case. And then I think if they need to accept the results as the ones that are part, like really like part of the study and actually leading that. It is also an approach, a very good approach for them to convincing others within the organization to adopt their approaches. And so we like collected hundreds of those that we help. Some of them are more validated, some are less. But when you are showing the data, it is very hard to argue with that. Yeah, so they are. I think it's more confusing than helping. There is we are always, and maybe it's another like an approach that like we are taking a bit differently. But it's like personally, I'm trying to avoid the coolness of the technology all the time. I really want to make it because this is a distraction, and the expectation is that AI will be like some kind of like an oracle that will just tell you what to do. So there is a lot more acceptance to it, but this is not actually what like really like move an organization. And eventually, the what we are doing in like mostly is that the AI is enabling to find the evidence for the right approaches, and also helps to organization to adopt that. The AI also helps in other things, like it helps them to streamline their process and operation, like daily meetings with theater that creates key highlights from yesterday are a lot more efficient than there was when they just like I don't know like just set it like for memory. We are helping with generation of we talked about operative reports. We help to create more accurate and also really effortless documentations that are much better than the templates that they have today, because the templates are not live. So this is something that is actually grounded by the things that actually happen. So AI can really improve the life of the end users, and we are doing that definitely, but more so the insights that we can gain by capturing the information from surgery. This is what actually makes the largest difference.
I'm curious, maybe in the translation of visual imagery and video, especially in surgery, to documentation, there has to be a text component and a vision component. And is that something that you kind of already solved before this big LLM, like LVM wave of things? Or is that something which you've taken advantage of, the latest in foundation models and especially multimodal foundation models to make these work in a more effective way?
So I think it's a combination. I don't think like, and you never really solve anything, right? It's an ongoing process, and you need to adapt. I think our strongest foundations and where we were unique is on the computer vision side of things. This is also where's the biggest challenge. This is where there is at least like more globally there isn't enough data. We are also, I think this is something that is also unique, that we are the solution that collects the surgical footage, because before that there is no like large data sets for surgical videos. So this was another barrier that we had to solve along the way. So this is definitely our main focus. Documentation was the textual documentation was a smaller piece that we wanted to see how we can connect it with the actuals, with that what happened during surgery, and we didn't leverage Gen AI for creating documentation. We did leverage LLMs to find the matches that we are like understanding what is missing in the documentation, understanding like the what we call the discrepancies. So yes, this is something that we have done before. Now we are more investigating approaches of Gen AI for generation of operative reports and
Mm,
notes. This is also something that, especially when you are in healthcare, is challenging because you want the guardrails for that. You don't want to, and it's always like looks like a very like magically and amazing. But when you are starting to generate data, when you want to really assure that you are not generating something just like sounds good, but just like you find yourself there. So also with a lot of limitations and using templates, but we are leveraging latest technology for both the understanding piece of the like structuring of the documentation and also the generation piece.
mm. So is that what's next for Theater, or is there's other initiatives on the horizon? How are you looking about the future of the company from a technological perspective?
So we are always and it's really like organized long-term process of going we call it like so there are like three things that we are doing. We are going deep, which means that we are understanding more and more granular information about the procedures that we are supporting, and having like a lot better grasp on understanding surgery and learning surgery, building AI that understands surgery. Going wide, because there are 14 surgical specialties, so it's like a lot of different procedures. It's not just like one type of
Mm, hmm hmm
procedure that you need to learn, and we are constantly expanding on that. So and making the effort of expanding much lower each time. So this is like a lot of like we are the first company to demonstrate transfer learning in surgery, which wasn't an obvious solution. When we are explaining it to surgeons and physicians, we are saying it's like very similar to residency. You have like you're going to do a
mm,
specific specialty, but you are like you're starting with a simple like with the very common procedures, and then you like move on to more and more complex ones. So our model takes a very similar approach to that, and we are continuing to expand. So this is wide, and then like I would say it's like going to the OR more. So a lot of the things like there is always things that we are doing intraoperatively. We are doing it in real time, and then everything that we are doing, everything else, we are doing post-operatively, because a lot of the value that we can provide can be done immediately after surgery ends for like reporting, analysis, and so forth. So we are transitioning more and more of our technology to the endpoint and to the real time to allow us to be more involved in the decision when they are being made, and not retrospectively about like the trends. So AI-assisted surgery is something that is always in our horizon, and we are getting closer and closer to it.
Yeah, that's very exciting, and I'm sure that there's going to be very tangible impact once that's working, and it's a good adjunct to surgeons, and make sure that it normalizes procedures across different types of surgeons, and gets the best practices really propagated throughout the community. So I would be very excited to see when that happens. I have a few rapid fire questions to wrap us up with. So I wanted to get your opinion on a few things. So one is, what advancement in AI are you the most excited about?
Oh, that's a big question. I think most exciting right now is and it's less about the technology, it's about maybe the community. In a way, it's the democratization of LLMs.
Mm,
I think that's a big change that we like the breaking the monopoly of OpenAI and Google, and we will see that this like Wikipedia approaches for
mm,
large language models and the new generation of AI will. My belief is that it will go much faster than can be done in closed approaches. So this is, I think, the most exciting for me when you see it starting to get to this like to the level of similar like closed source like Anthropic and OpenAI models.
amazing. If you could debunk one myth about AI, what would it be?
Oh wow! So one, I think we talked a bit about like the portion of AI in AI, like how important like that AI is like mostly operation, then
Hmm,
a lot of
hmm.
engineering, and in the end it's AI. Like some of it is about the research aspect of it, especially when you are trying to do something that is practical and not only just like to research. This is one. I also really don't like when like considering AI being a black box. Uh,
Mm,
this is always annoy me. I think it's like maybe like I don't know. So I was saying like maybe for you it's a black box, and there are things that in the conclusion or deduction process of AI models are definitely not intuitive because it's not the same models of thinking that of human thinking. But I think from that to not being able to be explainable or understanding the process of it, it's a long way to go. So I really want to I want to debunk the fact that it's a black box.
interesting.
This like no.
And that brings, yeah, that brings maybe to the last question. What does AGI mean for you?
Wow. I think nobody knows. So first of all, we are very far from that. It's something that
Yeah.
is important to know. And I think it's like, I think Turing test really taught us how little we know about true intelligence. Because it's obviously like it's no longer relevant, and we thought that this will be the ultimate test. I would say like 50 years ago. But the fact is that we I don't know what will be the next things that we will say that okay, if we will get that this is a true intelligence, and then we like just like realize that it doesn't. One thing that I have in mind, but it's very like it's more philosophical than knowledge, that it's about like taking in like AI to take initiative. I think this is something that like an initiative to
Hmm,
learn. One,
hmm.
I'm looking at babies as like it's interesting for an ML researcher to look at babies, and babies are learning. I think in a very similar way. It's like learning by
Yeah.
doing and by mistake. But nobody set up the training process for them, or like nobody
Hmm,
told
hmm.
them to learn. Like, it's very intuitively for them to try to improve and to learn. It's something that like AI models doesn't do today. It's not that AI model like decided to learn something new. Maybe that will be the inflection point for that, but probably not. We just don't know, and probably it's still not that. But we are
Well,
very far from that yet.
yeah. Well, I guess it's one of those things where we'll know it when we see it. You know, that's probably what AGI is, and I definitely take
Yeah.
the learning from babies as someone with a young daughter and see like, okay, interesting how she's learning and how she's kind of self-supervising her process, and you learn a lot about intelligence, about AI in general from that process. Well, but thank you so much, Dotan, for the time. Really appreciate. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think you had a bunch of really cool insights into the space, and I'm personally very excited about AI's use and soon, soon to be dissemination in the world of medicine and surgery in particular. So really appreciate the work that you're doing, and thank you for joining us.